Welcome to Flyers Game Day. Yeah, we're back. The season's not over. It's the unofficial second half. It is Jason Martinez, Chris Terry, and Brian Smith, and we're ready to talk some hockey again as the Flyers get set to return tonight against the Florida Panthers and the unofficial second half of the season. Final 32 games, all to play for. And Bundy, where I want to start is here. 32 games left. You're in playoff position. You've earned that spot. First of all, what is the feeling? Did you have a bye week coming back from a week like this when you played? And what are the kind of the pitfalls you got to try and navigate when returning after, a week plus off?
Well, I think there's a lot of different theories on that, and that's a great question, Jason. I think one of them, first off, is how are you playing going into the break? And that answer is pretty easy. Not good. They've lost 5 in a row. The other issue that this team has is the fact that they didn't have that mojo going. Now they've got to find that mojo again, and that can be difficult. So I think from the Flyers standpoint, they have to be on their toes. They have to be ready, and they have to squash this losing streak somehow. The other thing tonight will be getting their legs under them again. Konechny's the only guy that played, and there's no real synchronicity between the teams missing 9 or 10 days. So they're going to have to find that again very quickly.
Yeah, it's just looking at, kind of the way that last segment ended in January, and, they had a ton of games, ton of travel, things like that. And I felt like this team, they're successful when they have their energy up, and nobody will ever use it as an excuse. But I'm curious your thoughts on how you felt coming out of a break like this. Obviously, there's some things you got to watch out for when you're playing in a situation like this. And I don't think you ever had like a whole week off as a player like these guys do now. But I would imagine that at the very least their energy and any sort of illnesses or injuries or whatever are doing a little bit better at this point.
Yeah, there's no question that the week would give them a chance to rest, to get their, to get any of those minor injuries that are lingering to feel better about themselves. And that's something that'll be important for this team as well. Coming down the stretch, being healthy. One of those good signs tonight, and the guy they sorely missed was Owen Tippett. He'll be back playing his first game in Florida as a Flyer against his former Panthers. So that's a good sign to get a guy back healthy. But that'll be one of the keys for this last third of the season. And also, I think when you look at the way the Flyers have been playing, they can go back, like right now, go back and just play hockey. Don't overthink the game too much. Get back to playing the kind of game you have. And I think that really is a fresh, clean off that 9 days off or whatever it is. And this is an opportunity to hit the reset button and win the last third of the season. And with that, you'll get a playoff berth.
Buddy, I talked about on Flyers Daily a bunch of the knowns heading into this final 32 games based on what we've seen this season, at least knowns with relative certainty, and then the unknowns. And the unknowns have to be answered in a positive way for this team to see this thing all the way through the 82 games to a playoff berth. And one of the biggest ones is going to be strength in goaltending. The schedule in February is not that bad. They have multiple days off between games on a number of occasions, one back-to-back. But then you get into March, there's 15 games in 30 days. Mm-hmm. The strength of the goaltending down the stretch is going to be paramount. And you cannot play Sam Ersson every game.
You cannot. And that's where, whether it's Cal Peterson or if they have a resolution to that situation as well, that's probably not ideal that they play him more than they have to. But you have to give the goalie a rest. And with 15 games, you said in 30 days, Jason, that's a lot of hockey. But fortunately, we still have a lot of time left in February for them to right the ship. But that becomes a very, very monumental task when you're playing every other night and asked to try to provide wins. So everyone else is going for it too at that time, especially teams that are close to the bubble or just in. You're going to find some really competitive games, and I think that's what the Flyers are going to be staring down at.
Bundy, if the goaltending is, goaltending can be the bailout button, and the players in front of a goaltender bailing them out will play better with more creativity and take some more risk. If that's not there, the Flyers are a quick transition team. That's what they try and be. They haven't been the last 5 games, but if that strength and goaltending is not there, it can affect everything up front.
It can, because they play a certain system, right? Like they play a very hard defensive checking system while also pushing the pace and transition with speed on offense, trying to be creative in the offensive zone with what they have on their team. So, I think that when you look at this Flyers team, having the goaltending, and listen, I say this, Carter Hart was here, Sam Ersson is here. And I think you have to remember Sam has played some very good games. The problem is they don't have that 1A, 1A type of goaltending tandem that they had going. We talked about this last week, Jason and Brian. Sometimes every goaltender is different, right? Some guys play better when they have competition, and other guys, sometimes when they have full reign of the net, may not be what they were with that same competition. So there's a lot of question marks. I think we're going to find out the answer to a lot of those pretty quick. But yes, having a good Sam Urson playing the way that we've seen him play at times is going to be super important for this team.
I guess,
I feel
again,
yeah, go ahead.
with the way the way things have fallen out here the last week or so, that there's a little bit more certainty on the situation. I don't know if there's a situation now where maybe the Flyers decide. I guess it'll depend on how these next couple of days go, or a couple of weeks go. But whether it's a time to just bring Felix Sandstrom up and see what he's got here over the next few weeks, months. In terms of where you're going to go with him moving forward, because you're going to have to make a decision next year on what the goaltending situation looks like. And again, I think it probably depends on how the team plays here over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But this is a very interesting and fluid situation, I think, here, just in terms of who the Flyers have around right now and where they're going to go in the future.
Absolutely. And I think that there's going to be people like on this team that we've said before are not going to be part of this team. And that's going to be part of, the coaches and the management to figure out that exact pattern and what they want to do and who they want to keep and how they're going to find people that are going to be part of this organization, retaining draft picks. So there's a lot that's going to go into the next few weeks, guys. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Bundy, one thing that can help goaltending is defending better and defending less. and that all of those things, the structure being for the goaltender's perspective being predictable, and having the back door covered or high slots covered, guys doing their jobs and defending less. This team, when they were having success, did defend less. But over that last 5 games, it looks like, look, you faced Nathan McKinnon, you faced Nikita Kucherov, you got Pasternak. They're great players, Hart Trophy candidates for sure. But it seems like, okay, now there may be a book on the Flyers on how to attack them. And now they got to adjust and make sure that they defend better and by proxy defend less.
Yeah, and really the biggest issues I've seen for this team, especially in the Boston game, especially against Pasternak and those type of players, their play down below the hash marks to the boards and in around the net area has been substandard. And that makes it easy. And what happens is when you play like that, it signals to the other team that you can take advantages in and around the crease area, that you can body yourself there or will yourself there. And I also don't like a lot of the quick plays that have taken place with the puck in front. So that's, again, defenseman head on a swivel, getting backside help from the center or winger, depending on where the puck is. But I think really for this team, tightening up D zone is important, but also making sure that you're swift on it. These are when the games get really hard now. Like this is going to be, these games are going to get as good as they're going to get in a lot of playoff type formats. So they're going to have to be ready for it. And good teams will understand with good players that if you're going to beat teams, you're going to have to pull that puck to the net somehow, some way, and create chaos in the crease. And I think teams over the last few days or the last few games prior to this, before the break, had done that. But you have willing guys that do that, like Kucherov, as you've said, McKinnon. I mean, McKinnon was on a mission here night here, and the schedule doesn't get any easier. But that's what you want. You want to see how you are, who your team is against really good competition in the post-January. I mean, games don't get any better regular season than they should be getting right now. So every game is meaningful. Every 2 points is super huge. But again, the Flyers have got to get back to. There's a formula that they had, and you're right, Jason, talking about the goaltending. You need the goaltending to make that save, so you give yourself an opportunity to get the one that wasn't scored on you, and so that becomes very much part of the factor. But at the same time, they can't change how they play because they think they have a different type of goaltending tandem in play. And yeah, that's the case. But I looked at a lot of the way this team played, not because of the goaltending, but really because of the heart and soul that they themselves had put into most games this year. And listen, we've known they've had a lack of skill, and they've done an unbelievable job getting to where they are. The magic trick here now is going to be to find out who they really are. This is where you find out for sure who you are as a team. And if you're up to par of putting that work in for the last third and finding a way to get into the playoffs and stay in the playoffs where you're at now. As I've always said, it's a lot easier being in the playoffs than trying to get into the playoffs. But certainly, 0 points out of a possible 10 available prior to the break. leaves them with a sour taste in their mouth. And that's why tonight it becomes so important. It doesn't get easier on Thursday. You got Winnipeg coming in, and you got Seattle on Saturday, who's desperate for wins. Like, again, this is what the schedule is, and it's going to be very, very difficult if the Flyers continue to fall. It's all about momentum. Momentum is as bad when you're losing as it is good when you're winning. And I've always said, probably 100 times to you, Jace, when you're winning, it feels like you're never going to lose, but the same is in reverse. When you're losing, it almost feels like it feels impossible that you're ever going to get a win again. But you will. It's just a matter of when you turn the tide again.
Yeah, it was something you mentioned a moment ago, Bundy, to your point about the area in front of the net. They hammered that yesterday in practice. I mean, they probably worked on that for half an hour, which is a huge number this time of year. And so certainly it's something they're trying to solve. One of the other things I noticed over the break was, I was looking back at something for some reason, and just brought this up. In the 12 days before the break, the 15th through the 27th, top 3 scorers in the league: Nathan McKinnon, David Pastrnak, Nikita Kucherov, and all 3 of them come through during that losing streak. So certainly a bad time for them to catch those guys, but you're right. In order to take that, I mean, whatever step they're going to take here down the stretch, they're going to have to deal with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, and that, sometimes you get a little bit lucky in the playoffs. I mean, look at but you can't hope for wins. You can't hope the other team doesn't show up and you have an easy night. It's like 2010, right, Jace? You get out of the Boston, and then you end up playing Montreal with the 7th seed as the home team, where things go your way, but you can't always ask the hockey gods to do you those kind of solids. And that's exactly where the Flyers are at. They've done a great job this year. They've had good coaching, they've had good goaltending, they've had good plays from a lot of guys, a lot of great defensive plays. But again, it's going to be reassembling those great traits that they've had if they want to indeed make the playoffs and stay where they are.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to see some more star players that are Hart Trophy candidates. You got Toronto a couple of times, and Austin Matthews. Just every time the puck leaves the stick, you think it's going to go in. You got Boston again. You've got coming up, you got to go to Tampa Bay coming up in about a week's time. So you're going to see these players. You got to find a way to mitigate the damage they can do. Let's take our first time out here on Flyers Game Day. It's Flyers Panthers, the second-ranked team in the Eastern Conference, points percentage-wise. The Panthers. We're back after this on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network. It is Flyers Game Day. Jason Martinez, Chris Terry, and Brian Smith getting ready for Flyers Panthers. Bundy, a guy I want to ask you about specifically is Noah Cates. He's played in 28 games this season. He's got a goal and 4 assists. After a year last year where he had a bit of a breakout year, he comes in this year and it just hasn't gone his way. He obviously had the injury, which derailed him as well. But does a player look at these final 32 games and go, I'm going to rewrite the story on my 2023-24 season in these final 32 games? I've got an opportunity to do that and go out there and be a difference maker and a guy that can really help this team.
Yeah, great question. The problem for me with watching Noah Cates right now is I haven't noticed him. He's unnoticeable on the ice, and it's not a good thing, but he's also coming off an injury. He'd been out of the lineup. The team really played well. It had nothing to do with Noah Cates. The team played well in his absence. They were able to fill in what he did, but he needs to take a much bigger bite of the apple than he has. He's weighted himself into the lineup, and that's really not what you want to do. There's a good player there. There's a good, responsible player, but I think the one thing, and I think John Tortorella would tell him this too. You're not going to be a regular everyday player moving forward in the years just playing defensive hockey. You have to score. You have to be wanting to make decisions offensively that are for the betterment of the team too. And I really think, since the games he's been back, I haven't noticed a lot of heavy offensive push. Maybe one chance I think he had the last, it was at Boston or the game before, but he's been playing around the perimeter. And that's not the game that he played last year. So, again, injuries do things to guys. It sets your mind off. You sometimes forget maybe who you were as a player. But I think the comment that you made about him saying, hey, I'm going to do this the last X amount of games is a great starting point for a player to say, all right, you know what? I'm going to hit a reset here. I was injured. I had an okay start. The points are not piling up for me. They probably won't. In terms of like the end of the year numbers, like he's going to look at his end of the year numbers and realize he probably doesn't have 20 points, right? And that can discourage you. So keep doing the good things that he's done defensively, but also don't be afraid to add on to the offense, because that's very much part of it. No coach anymore in today's game, unless you're a good, solid defensive defenseman, is going to ask you to just not provide points, or at least try to provide offense. They want defensemen up in the rush every time, an extra layer of offense. So yeah, I think he needs to figure that out. But I think right now, just watch him. He just needs to go out and be a hockey player. And I don't think he's really done that yet. He looks like somebody who's got cement boots on, and he's got a whole lot in his head thinking about the game that he should never have to do.
It's probably not exactly the same comparison, but we did a lot of looking at him last year and saying, okay, this is replacement for Sean Couturier, and it kind of brings me back to the first half of Coots' career when he wasn't really being used in an offensive role, but finally went to the coaching staff and said, hey, I want to do more, and they moved him up, and he responded. I don't think Cates is in a position where we're going to get moved up in this lineup necessarily, but there's certainly a lot from the progression of Sean Couturier's career that he could take as well, just in terms of trying to now add the offensive side now that the defensive side's been established.
Yeah, and Coots is and that's absolutely true, Brian. Coots is a little bit different scenario guy for me in terms of looking at both him and Noah Cates. Coots was a first-round pick, and he was a highly touted offensive player in the Quebec League. At one time, he was supposed to be the first pick, possibly in the draft.
Mono.
Yeah. So he fell. And I think what happened with the Flyers when they had him, they had an opportunity at that time where they were kind of still redeveloping. They were reacquiring assets. They got Tiemann in here. They got, they were making a shift towards the good. And I really think that when you look at that complete trajectory, I think it's one that's made a lot of sense. But I also think that, getting him to play that kind of hockey defensively, learn the game in the NHL as a young guy, I think suited him to become the great two-way player that he's begun. So I think the Flyers had a lot more leeway working with Coots because there was a time frame. They said, hey, we could really round this guy out, and they did. Cates is different. He wasn't the high first-round pick that Coots was, that had all the offensive upside as well. So, there's a guy there that I think you say, hey, we can really make this guy a very good or much better defensive player. But they're waiting for the offense, and I don't know if it's going to come this year. I just don't know because of the injury situation he went through.
No doubt about it. Before we focus on the game tonight with Florida and the Flyers, but I got to ask you this philosophical question. Over the past 2 weeks, we saw Owen Tippett get an 8-year extension at an AAV of $6.2 million, and we saw Ryan Poehling, who came in on a 1-year deal, bet on himself, get a 2-year extension. What does that say to the other players in the locker room? Because you're starting to see Danny Briere start to lock elements in place of a new core. And, you see Sam Ersson got extended last offseason, and you're starting to see some of the pieces of that are going to be locked in. What does that say to the rest of the guys there in that locker room that, hey, if I perform well and play well, I'm going to be a part of this long term? Like, how does that kind of go into a player's head that sits next to those guys in the room?
Well, I think everybody has to have a role defined, right? And I think that Tippett, when you look at him, I think it's a fair deal for everybody. I mean, that's a great deal. He becomes a rich man, and the Flyers, I think, got a very fair contract, for the AAV, the average for per year. So that's a great signing, and that's one that the Flyers should be very happy about, the fans as well. Poehling is more like like a fill gap type of guy, even though it's 2 years, but he could be Lawton's replacement. Obviously, nobody beyond that. So you got a guy for 2 years. It hadn't worked out for him in a lot of other teams, and he's certainly found a home here. Poehling, where he's comfortable. Owen Tippett, just got to keep doing what he's doing. Just keep driving the net. Use your feet. Use that speed. Use that size and shot, and he can do that every year, if he wants. So I do think that the message is, though, like, this is the kind of level that they want of guys competing. Poehling competes hard. So does Tippett, offensively with the puck. And I just think that the message to the guys is, if that's indeed what it is, that, hey, this is a kind of player we want to have here. We want to have some character guys. We want to have guys that are going to put the work in, that are going to be difficult to play against. And I think that really is a message. You have to start somewhere, and you have to, as we said, they're going to clip pieces that are going to be of value, that they find of value. And like they said, and even the coach Torch said that there's going to be guys that won't be here that you probably ended up liking. But that's how this
fall
has
in
to
love.
be approached. Yeah. You can't fall in love with anybody here right now because that's the way it is. They have a vision and they're going to execute that vision.
So I guess, turning focus to tonight while we're on the same topic, Owen Tippett back in the lineup tonight. And, I guess it goes without saying that the way he was playing, especially at the time of his injury, Flyers could, will greatly welcome his offensive capabilities back into the lineup. But, it's got to be a little bit, I don't know. It doesn't sound like he was worried too much about it, but I mean, you have to be a little bit of a weight off your shoulders, I should say, when you come into a situation now where you're going to be here for the long term. You don't have to worry about that anymore. It's time to stop renting if you're doing that. I mean, that's it'd be interesting to see how he's able to respond to that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean that's what comes with being a pro, So I hope that's not any. I wouldn't expect it to be an issue, but yeah, it should be a moment of comfort for now. But also, hey, they bought me for a reason, to be a big part of this piece, and it's not like you sign and now you mail it in. It's you sign and now you go, and you're part of this for a long part here. You're going to be part of this core, and you're going to find out if you're going to be a member of a Stanley Cup champion with this group, because that'll take you through another generation, that contract. And that's exactly what you're going to see out of what they're doing right now. Only pieces coming. There's still pieces coming, but they're still going to do their job, and they're going to find the right pieces. Great. They're both great extensions. I love Poehling and both Tippett, and they're going to be real central pieces in their roles, defined roles for this team.
Yeah, funny thing, since Nylander signed his contract, hasn't performed well. Sometimes guys let their foot off the game. Fat wallet sometimes weighs a player down. The ultimate motivator. I saw this earlier today that, there's a bunch of players in the league right now that are on the final year of their deal and are just putting up monster numbers this year because, the wallet is the great motivator in sports. You look at guys like, Demko and Hellebuyck. Well, they're signed already, those two guys. But you got guys just in the final year of their deal making, trying to make big money, and that's the way to do it and to perform well. So, Bundy, this game tonight, it looks like it's going to be Stoley the goalie for Florida. I'm kind of shocked by that because they're coming out of a break, and Bob's been really good this year, and both guys are former Flyers, so it's not like, hey, we're going to circle this because you played for the team. But this team, and they got a guy in Sam Reinhart who's got a shooting percentage, which is absurd, frankly, of 27.6%. He's got 37 goals. That's obviously not a sustainable. Dude's got 20 power play goals.
Yeah.
This team, you don't want to put them on the power play. They can score. They're one of the top teams in scoring in the league. So just buckle down and attack this team and protect the middle of the ice.
Yeah, be ready to battle because they forecheck hard. They got a lot of they play with a lot of energy. They play with a snarl. Yeah, again, like one thing that they do, they feast on turnovers like nobody. And I mean they have good players. They have competitive players. They had a great run last year. They're feeling good about their game. And they're probably another team that's going to start putting it into another gear too as they approach the playoffs. They smell it. I'm sure Florida this year. Like it looks like it's kind of wide open in a lot of ways, and Florida in a sense could be that team that could get back there again. And I think they're going to put a pretty heavy push on. So Florida is a tough team. I've liked Florida and the makeup of that team for many years now, and I think it's just starting to come to fruition. So Flyers got their hands full tonight against Florida, but I'll tell you this. I could actually see an upset tonight. I could see the Flyers going down there and everyone's saying, "Oh, how can that?" No, I actually have a feeling that it could be an interesting matchup. So we'll see what happens, but you got to be ready for a battle. Like you have to get a snarl on to play Florida, and you almost have to play them angry, but under control.
That sounds like a Bundy money line bet tonight. I like it. Plus money in Florida.
Yeah, you may see that out later. Yeah, you never know.
But Bundy,
go ahead, Brian.
Are we out of time? Or are we good?
No, you're good. Keep going, buddy.
I want to toss you a wild card here from the player relationship standpoint. The big news down here right now is that Florida just opened up a new practice facility, and it sounds like it's right in the neighborhood where all the guys live. They used to all have to drive 30 minutes to both their practice rink and to the games because everything is outside the city here. And I'm just curious from an athlete's perspective on, how big a improvement that is for them, because it does sound like, some of these guys are driving golf carts to the rink now, which you can do down here in February. But that seems to me obviously to be something that can't do anything but help a team.
Smitty, anytime you get to drive a golf cart to work instead of a car is probably a really good thing.
Yeah, no doubt. Load up the golf cart and
Good
head
for
over.
them. They can bring, you know what's great? They can put your hockey bag there on the seat, and you can put your clubs on the back for when you're done.
Yeah, go right from the rink to the first tee, and you'll be good to go. All right, stay tuned. We've got Flyers Panthers coming up. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day. Countdown to face-off with Tim Saunders and Todd Fedora coming up next. Enjoy the hockey tonight on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.